I've got Nate Saunders here joining me, and we're just going to chat about the breaking news that we heard today in Formula One, and that is that the Chinese Grand Prix has indeed been, well, we'll clarify if it's been postponed or cancelled indefinitely, but because of the epidemic of the coronavirus that's been going on. Nate, this was something we were talking about just on the podcast last week and wondering what was going to happen and how soon something needed to happen. So what do you make of the news and this decision right now?
Well, it's not hugely surprising. You know, it seems like quite a long way out from the event because it's April the 19th is when it was scheduled. But with Formula One, there's so much freight that has to go off. There's sea freight, there's air freight. So you're actually talking about a much shorter time frame. And obviously, given the situation there's a Formula E race that was cancelled. There's been a lot of Olympic qualification events that have been moved away from China. And it doesn't seem like the situation's improving at all. So Formula One has to make that decision for safety. And it was actually requested by the organiser of the race. And they've asked for it to be postponed. So it's not been cancelled, it's been postponed. And now the tricky job is finding a place for that to go in the calendar.
I was going to say, so how does this impact the calendar now? Is it, how would you describe it, a massive gap or something that probably can be worked around?
Well, the funny thing is this is a record-breaking calendar, as it was. It was 22 races. There'd never been 22 races before, and now the biggest gap is the one left by China. There's now 4 weeks between Vietnam and the Dutch Grand Prix. Finding a place to put China is almost impossible because logistically, you can't put that race in a triple header with other races or a double header because it's so difficult to get custom in and out of China efficiently. We had a triple header in 2018 between France, Austria, and Great Britain, and the team said that nearly put them to breaking point. And that was, you know, in one continent in a pretty comparatively small region. So trying to do that across Asia or across various continents is almost impossible. So finding a gap for that is interesting.
So could we be staring at possibly not having it just in this calendar year?
I think so. I mean, they're going to keep it postponed until they've exhausted every option. I think there's three scenarios. They can swap with the Russian Grand Prix, but Russia doesn't want to move. And obviously all of these other events have sold tickets. They've got business deals around their current slot. So they can't just say, hey, yeah, we'll move back to your date or we'll shift back a bit as well. So F1's in a really tricky situation. And then there's suggestions that they might move Abu Dhabi, have China right at the end of the year, which gives it enough time for the crisis to have changed and to have improved. But the weather in November and December in China, if you moved the normal race to that time of year, I think people would laugh you out of the room. So just because of these situations, I don't think you can move it that late. So it's really hard to see it going ahead. But given that it's China, I was speaking to somebody from another F1 team, and they said if this was most other races, F1 would have said, cool, it's off, we'll do it next year.
China,
but China's such a growing market, they're determined to make sure they have it on. So I think if you hear that is cancelled, you know they've exhausted literally everything they can think of.
And then finally, before we wrap up, because of course you've been a very busy bee all day, we've been trying to tie him down, but you have been dealing, of course, with this news. What's been the reaction like from the F1 family and fraternity around as journalists as well too?
Well, I think that it's interesting, actually. I was looking at social media. A lot of fans are saying, why can't they just move the race back and why can't they just have another race? And this is important for the ordinary people that work in F1, a lot of the mechanics, the people that follow these teams around. They fly economy around the world and stuff like that. And the logistics of the calendar are already kind of backbreaking for them. So I think a lot of people are relieved that there's not going to be this huge question mark over the race. A lot of people wondering if it will be shoehorned in at another point. I think a lot of fans, if they were given the option, would have 30 races in a year. But yeah, I think that people see the right decision was made, and ultimately going forward, they're not going to make that race if they can't make it safely. So I think F1 people are happy they've made that decision. Maybe some fans wish, you know, we might get Germany back, or I saw someone say Imola might come back, but I think those are almost certainly not going to happen. So, so yeah, that's where we're at.
Perfect. Nate Saunders, always a pleasure. I'm going to let him go, continue tracking this story. For more details, you know to keep it right here at ESPN. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.